3 teams, 3 services, one 9 o'clock deploy window, and a spreadsheet that tells everyone which service goes first, which goes second, and what exact time everyone should hit the deploy button. Coordinating releases by calendar is fragile, and sadly this is how a lot of teams coordinate their release, right? And not because they want to, but because they are limited by the tooling they use. So when they scale, they add more services, and the moment it becomes non-trivial, right? A lot of services depend on one another, right? They have to resolve to calendar invites, CAB meetings, and a lot of processes, right? That's not automated or does not meet compliance, right, or audit requirements in order to coordinate a release. So in this video, I'm going to show you how Octopus Deploy solves this particular problem, right, in Platform Hub with an idea called process templates, and a particular process template called Verify Dependencies. And we'll see how when as a team you're scaling and adding more services, you can automate deployment, right, approvals, you automate dependency checks, versioning, right, all predefined in a template that any other team can use. And from a platform engineering perspective, the platform team can offer this template to developers in order to streamline their deployment process, right, and everything is consistent across the entire organization, meeting compliance requirements. So just stay with me and let's get right to it. But firstly, let's talk about why this is even worth a conversation, right? So service-based architectures are a default now, right? Most organizations have microservices. And the sad thing, right, on this case is that here, though you can scale limitlessly with a service-based architecture, most of these services, right, they depend on one another. And now services depending on one another, not every service is owned by one particular team. And this other external team, right, within the organization, not the main development team or main application team in quotes, right? They have their own priorities, they have their own schedules of deployment on their own time. So now, when you get to that, right, the coordination effort of all these skills, right, using a deployment mechanism, right, you've been using from when you were just one service or just 2 services, it can't scale. So here's a typical version of this problem, right? Let's say you ship a service that's running on 2.20, right? But production is still running on 2.0, right? So now everything looks good, right? Green tick, green flag on your own deployment, right? But because there is a version mismatch, right, the error starts coming in. And then again, all of a sudden there's an incident, and everyone is getting a message with your incident from your incident management platform in the night to, this service is down, there's a mismatch and all that, right? The honest framing is that this is not a code problem, this is a coordination problem, this is a versioning problem, this is a processes problem, right? And then sadly some organizations now bring AI on top of the problem, thinking AI can solve when the fundamental processes is not designed, right? And then there's all chaos, and the chaos is amplified by AI. And now most teams normally they will solve the problem by let's say a release manager, a CBA meeting here and there and all. So and if you scale, right, or when you scale, because every company wants to scale, when you scale you start having more issues, more challenges, or trying to get 10 teams to deploy at 9 a.m. in the night, or trying to get 5 teams to deploy at 1 a.m. And then again with the working landscape we have, right, the remote work landscape and the way organizations are structured, you may have a team in a different time zone in Australia, in Japan, or in the Middle East, or in far as at the West Coast in Americas, right? Trying to coordinate that time will be a struggle. And the good thing is that Octopus Deploy have a way to solve this problem, and it's called a process template. But before we talk more about process templates and see a demo, let's first of all understand what a process template is. So I can go to the Octopus documentation, I can zoom in. The process templates basically are a reusable set of deployment steps, right, that can be predefined by anyone that has the that has the permission, right, in the organization. So to avoid unnecessary deduplication, right? Duplication, and whatever term you use to you call it, right? So the idea is that platform teams, right? Every organization, most organizations are building platform teams now to manage to help developers move faster. Platform teams can create reusable templates, right? Reusable deployment processes. So now, Verify Dependencies was created, right, by a platform team because of a niche use case they had, right? Because the services grew large and large, right? And the application couldn't afford any downtime. And the team resulted into 8 p.m. Deployment windows to deploy all the services to be in tandem. So this process template helps to solve this and gives organizations that power, like within Octopus Deploy, to create it. And what only developers do, right, is to provide the necessary JSON, right, of the requirement of the versions and what should go after, and everything is pretty defined. So now that we understand what process templates are, we can go into looking into what Verify Dependency is, right? So what is Verify Dependencies process template? So this is the process template lives in Platform Hub. So I can just head over to the Everything DevOps Octopus deploy instance. So I log in and I can show you that. So I've pre-built like a demo project for this particular video to show you Verify Dependencies, and I can go to Platform Hub. So this Platform Hub, I can see that the published process template is available. The deploy process Verify Dependencies is available for me to use. And as you can see, right, there are under the hood of Verify Dependencies process template are 3 steps, right? First, it checks dependencies, right? The next is approve dependency results. So you want like, there's an ITSM, right? It's an approval process in your team. You're using ServiceNow, Jira, service management, or any other tooling you use, right? And you want the approval system for deploying some certain dependencies and deploying some certain applications, so you can do that. And then, right, then there's the optional pause for approval, right? So yeah, and then like that's what I mentioned. Then there's also deploy dependencies, right? When you want the Verify Dependencies process template to actually deploy your dependencies. So this process template, right, is available for you to customize how you want, right? And the only thing it requires, as you can see, you need just to provide the JSON. I can zoom in, and you need just to provide the JSON configuration of the necessary project and how they depend on each other, right? And the deployment groups, I will talk more about that as I go into the demo. The deployment groups, the versioning and all that, right, in your configuration when using these dependencies. And we can just go to the live projects, right? Demo project for this. Stop coordinating releases by calendar. You can see like the parent application that I've created. And we can look at this process template. I've set up the process template, right? And you see the only thing I provided for this process template is the JSON configuration. And let's say, and the environment is a preview target environment, my API key and all the necessary details and all that. And then you can also use like a multi-tenant application, deploy multi-tenant application with the process template. You can deploy to Kubernetes. For this demo, I'm deploying to a Linux host, right? But you can see I have an EKS cluster here. That can be my deployment target. So what I'm mentioning this is the Verify Dependencies process template. It doesn't define you to like your target environment. It doesn't define you to like, it doesn't define you to a particular target environment. It doesn't define you to a particular type of application. So whether it be a .NET application, right, whether it be Node.js, whether it be a Java application, whether it be a Rust application, because I know we all love Rust now, or a Go application in the cloud native world. Everyone is using Go to build their applications and all. So it doesn't define you to any type of target deployment and all that, right? And this is all only what the developers, right, have to worry about. And we'll talk more about that. And you can see the properties, their requirement and all, and the documentation, like as you can see and more, right? I'll link below in this video. Is very detailed for you to know what's the next step and what you should do, right, and all that. So now we'll be diving deep into the demo, right? So I've already talked about this project, this demo project, leave and discard that I created. So this is the dependency checker project. So this dependency checker is the parent project, right? It's a project that everything else that depends on everything else, right? So dependency checker is a project that depends on everything else. So it depends on spare, depends on store, depends on Taka, depends on tower in order for it to like properly deploy, right? And I can check this project. I've already like I showed you earlier, I've already configured the process template, the Verify Dependencies Process Template for this project. So first of all, it checks the dependencies, it checks tower, Taka, and also store hub and spare. It approves dependency result depending on the approval system ITSM that I set, right? And also it can deploy the dependencies and also deploy the dependency checker application, right? And all. So now this is the process template. So for this demo, we are using our target deployment, target environment as a boot tool. So this Octopus deploy API key is what used to also deploy the dependencies, right? And also coordinate the release. And then targeted environment, I've talked briefly about the project dependencies. So for all these projects, it stop coordinating the release by calendar projects, right? In all these individual projects in the like all these dependency projects, spare tower and all. So I have set the version patterns, right? So it can only deploy if the spare version, right, is greater than 1.0.56, right, and is in deployment group 1. So deployment group 1 in this part in the Verify Dependencies Process Template means that is the first. You should deploy that application, that dependency first. Deployment group 2, it means like the next dependency. So it's an optional variable. Right? So if you leave it as like, if you don't put the variable, all the dependencies will be deployed simultaneously, right? Octopus deploy will attempt to deploy all the dependencies simultaneously. But now we have 1.1, then 2.2. So it will deploy the deployment group 1 first, right? Then move on to deployment group 2. And then then the tilde, right, is for if their versions are similar to 2.4 for the Taka project. No. So this like is the documentation, right? We won't dwell on that, and I explain the versioning mechanism of the Verify dependency, right? So now for this default action, so we set the default action. So there are default actions for this Verify dependency process template. So I can set it to stop if one of the dependencies doesn't meet the prescribed criteria in the project in the JSON array representing the project, right? In terms of versioning, I can tell it to skip and continue. I can tell it to deploy when newer matching versions are found, right? I can tell it to deploy when no matching version is found, and all other edge cases. There are about 15 or so edge cases per project, right? Depending on the amount of applications that depend on each other. There are so many edge cases. For this, right, the default is stop deployment once it hits a version of an application that's a version of a dependency, right, that is not allowed based on the predefined like template. No. Then for approval, request approval. Then approval theme, I've set it to everyone. For this demo, I can set it to Octopus administrators, Octopus managers, space managers on my Octopus instance, right? And then for this tenant, I have no tenant, so I can leave this optional. I have no tenant application. So this is the process template configured, right, to check dependencies and also approve dependency result and also deploy the dependencies. So next, we're going to see how it works in real life, right? So let's go back to the stop coordinate, to the entire the project overview, right? So I've created this project, and as you can see, right, these are the versions of each project. So production and test, yes, the same version. Production and test, same version. Production and test, same version. All same version of this particular application, right? But if you notice something in the for this particular project, right, applications. But if you notice something in dependency checker, let me go back to the process and let's look at the process template. When configuring the project dependencies, right, I set a requirement that spare project must be greater than version 1.0.56. If not, it won't be deployed. If not, it will stop. And so now if I go back to the all projects, I can see that the spare project, both on test and on production, is version 1.0.54, which does not meet that requirement. So now I go and create a release for this demo, and I save the release, and then I say deploy to test, right? So I'm deploying to test. So now I deploy to test this particular application, right? Let's say a team, they built the application and all, but they don't know like the version of the dependent the applications, right, that parent application depends on, right, has gone higher or has gone lower, right? And they try to deploy the application and all. So when the dependency checker, right, when the parent project does not, when the parent project predefined version, right, that it needs in order to deploy does not meet that requirement, right? It does not, the project is depending on does not meet that requirement, the requirement that the project parent dependencies needs, right? It fails. And as you can see here, so it says spare does not have the version in test that matches greater than version 1.56. There is no matching version of version 1.96 in the previous environments deployed. The action is to stop, so failing the deployment. So no application is deployed. There's no error. It just stops, right? And then tells the engineer, right, at that particular time that, oh, there's a dependency that doesn't match what you require for this application to deploy. And then every other project like meets that requirement, but just that one project doesn't meet that requirement. So that is one scenario, right, to stop a dependency that doesn't mean stop a deployment, right, of a parent project or a project when the dependency versions doesn't meet the version the project requires, right? So now you can see, right, the Verify Dependency Process Template actually puts in guardrails, right, to avoid dependency mismatch, and that's very, very important. And like there's one little thing to point out here: Octopus Deploy, right, has this recovery agent, right, to help you deduce issues faster. And you can just click the recovery agent. It's an AI agent that helps you go through your application, go through your deployment rather, and sees what's the issue, right, and gives you a suggested fix. The Verify Dependency Process Template already has like a clear fixes and clear tells you exactly where the issue, what happened, right, and the issue, where the issue came from. But now the Octopus Deploy Recovery Agent gives you detailed step by step on how to fix it, the failure point, looking at the logs, right, saving you time in order to get your deployment ongoing. So now that's done. So let's look at another scenario with using the Verify Dependency Process Template. So now let's look at another scenario, right? So I'll go back to the project, and you can see I created a demo. I created new versions, right, of these projects, right, of the dependencies. So I deployed a newer version of Spare, newer version of StoreHub, newer version of Taka, right, a newer version of Tower. So now you can see that. So this scenario I want to walk you through is showing the deployment groups I mentioned earlier, right, deploying two sets of applications at the same time, right, and also sequentially. And also I want to also show you the approval feature of the Verify Dependency Process Template. So in order to get to that, let's first of all make sure that this process template, right, deploys the newer version that we deployed, right, in our test environment. So if you recall, when I talked about the default dependency actions, you can set deploy default dependency actions. So you can recall that stop if one of the dependency checks fails, right, continue, will proceed with the deployment. Deploy when you have matching version, we always deploy the latest matching version wherever it is, whether it be test or staging or wherever it is in the your application life cycle, right? And that's what we need for this demo. So I can change this from stop deployment to deploy when newer matching version found. Then I can save this process template, right, for the parent project, which is deployment dependency checker. So I can go now to releases and I can create a new release. So I can create a new release. We'll just say this release is the 0.02 and then save the release and then deploy to tests, right? And deploy to tests. And then we'll wait for it's to deploy to tests. And now we'll just wait while it's deploying to tests. We can look at the deployment log. So it's running the process template, it's checking all the dependencies, right? Using the input tool. So now everything was successfully deployed to test. So I can now go back to this, but I noticed, so then now from test it has moved to the next stage, which is deploying to production. And then I'll notice, oh wow, it needs approval to deploy to production, and that's what you need, right? Obviously in your CI/CD pipeline you want like an approval mechanism to stop deployment, right? Certain deployment at certain times or certain scenarios, or every deployment just really needs approval from a release manager, engineering manager, however I may say this, right? And the Verify Dependency process template is configurable in the sense that you can predefine how you want approval to be. So now using the inbuilt Octopus deploy approval system, you can also integrate with ServiceNow, right, for user IDs and single sign-ons, and integrate Jira and every other application you want with the Octopus deploy API. And as you can see, right, they say run a process template dependency results. So this task is waiting for manual intervention and must be assigned before proceeding, and this is what it shows, right? It requires that approval. So now for this demo purposes, I'll just assign to me. So I'll assign to me and then I'll see more of the notes. So now if I assign to someone else in my team, for example, I'm a junior engineer or mid-level engineer, I need my engineering manager to approve first so I can assign to them. So now they can either reject the deployment after going through the deployment, going through the task log and seeing what the deployment deploys, looking at the history, the changes and all the build information, right? And all. They can either reject it or they can proceed. So for this demo, I'll just proceed. So when I proceed, you can see, you can come and look at the task log and you see it checks, right? Checks the release, checks everything, and it deploys the newer version. You remember, it's no longer stopping because of you change the default action, and it finds the newest version in our pipeline, right, for that application, and it starts the process. And now another important thing, now it does that in parallelism, right, in parallel. So it starts the spare 1.07 application deployment, the newer version of spare, you found the newer version, right? And then it checks if there's available capacity to deploy Taka, and they are both in deployment group 1, right? And it checks and it sees, oh yes, that there is available capacity to deploy Taka, right? Then it starts deploying Taka in parallel at the same time, right? Because they are both in deployment group 1. And then you see deploying Taka to production, they are both in the deployment group 1. Then deployment for project spare to production successfully deployed. For the project Taka to production successfully deployed. They're all deployments for deployment group 1. If you remember at the beginning of this demo, right, I talked about the 2 deployment group. So deployment group 1 is done. Then it moves to the next deployment group, right, for sequential deployment. And now it starts the Tower application and is deploying the newest version of Tower that is in test, not the previous version that was in production. Because I set the Verify Dependency requirement to deploy the newer version. So it starts that same thing, checks available capacity, next for store hub, then it starts store hub in parallel. So that's how the Octopus Verify Dependency gives you so much flexibility to define how you deploy your application, right? The process, step-by-step process, the approval mechanism, what order to deploy every dependency so that there's no mismatch, there's no error, and there's no breaking change, right, when deploying your application. Especially in our world of microservices that has a lot of dependencies and depending on packages here and there. And you can see all deployments deployed, all deployments on the group 2 deployed, all dependency deployment have been verified. And then we've successfully deployed the parent application to production. So that's how straightforward deployment with the Verify Dependency Process Template is, right? And the good thing about Platform Hub is that you can create your own process templates, right? You can modify this Verify Dependency Process Template to also meet your requirements. You can create more process templates with Platform Hub. You can also use pre-built process templates, right, that are also existing on Platform Hub, and like design your platform engineering initiative, right, in your organization, one that fits your requirements. So now, one thing now before we wrap up, right, you've seen two scenarios. So there are many other possible scenarios, just like I mentioned, and these possible scenarios are discussed in this blog, right, that was written by Bob Walker, who is the creator of the Verify Dependency Process Template. And you can go through these blogs, an 18 minutes read with a lot of depth, right? And I can scroll on down to where he talks about like permissions, right? And all, we just looked at basic permissions from an approval mechanism, but there are several other permissions that you can integrate. Like I mentioned, ServiceNow, you can integrate Jira Service Management, and also you can define like what scenarios, right? Like there's so many possible scenarios. Like I mentioned, over 16 possible outcomes, right, for your project. And then it gives warning with approval, which you have seen. So I would urge you, I'll put the link to this blog in this video, this YouTube video on YouTube and every other platform that will share this video. You get to read through the blog, check out the process template on GitHub, look through it, try it out for yourself, and let me know how you get on. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can send me a message on Twitter. You can send me an email. You can also reply in the comments, right, on YouTube and whatever platform you're using, right? So that's all about it, and like make sure you check it out. And you can also reach out to Bob on all platforms that he's in, majorly LinkedIn. And I hope you have great joy deploying applications that have so many dependencies, and you are not gathering at 9 p.m. in EUST time zone just to make it an application deployment. So let me know how you get on. Check the links in the description, and do have a great rest of the day. Cheers.